kind of some of the areas that they focused on in their discussion. So how about anyone from my group over here on my right?
Dan, Steve, you want to step up and?
Dan wants all single-family houses.
No, that's, wait a minute,
Duplexes.
All right, can you come up to the mic so our viewing audience can?
Okay, so, going through the revenue with what they were doing for Perry Place, they're talking about $450,000 on a large scale of tax revenue. I really don't think the town is gonna be making out, it's gonna cost the town money. So I am dead set against the size of housing complexes like that. I honestly would love to see houses like Pheasant Court or those buildings down on James Street that are being built. I think we're gonna end up with more tax revenue out of houses like that. Duplexes, even three-decker multifamilies like are on Oxford Street. I just don't think the town it's gonna help the town in going large-scale housing complexes. Multi-use, that might be really good. You know, if they ever decide to get rid of Shaw's or something like that, you could do a like, what was it, Shrewsbury did. You know, the supermarket on the bottom with housing on top, Starbucks in the basement there, get down, get a coffee, go back upstairs. Hopefully they don't go in their pajamas. You know, stuff like that. I really don't think the town is ready for large-scale buildings. I'm all for everything. Just the tax revenue, I don't think is gonna be there on large-scale buildings.
Thank you for your feedback, Dan. Steve, are you of the same opinion, or it seems as though you had a?
I'm less worried about taxes, and more worried about people having housing and people can afford the housing. And I think we can get around the aesthetics fairly easily. But the bigger question to me is, if you put it in the hands of the developer, it's never gonna be affordable. So the town should be taking the lead on the development and not outsourcing it. Because I think there's just no way around it. If we can build a building and we can educate the kids every day, we can have emergencies and services there in 4 minutes, I think we can build a building that people are gonna live in for the next 50 years. I think we're just selling ourselves short. I also think we should look at, you know, just looking at the finances of the town and, you know, how much money gets shipped out of the town for insurance and mortgages and figure out how to keep that money in town so that we can use it for our purposes. Sorry. You know, there's lots of financial instruments in the world, and we're always the servant as opposed to the driver. And if we drive this, we can drive the development, we can drive the finances, and stop shipping money to, you know, New York. Because that's really where the money all goes. You know, if you look at the pension plans, the insurance money, like most of the budget is going to financial services. So we work, people pay taxes, give it to the town ships it out. Half of the paycheck is going to mortgages. If 20% of the people are in danger of foreclosure that are not in the affordable housing, like there's a tremendous amount of financial stress just running throughout the whole system. And inflation just makes it worse. The Fed raises the rate. They just, you know, what did it, you said it was 25 million it added to the public safety building. Like, that's crazy numbers. So as far as building goes, we only have so much land. You can build up or you can build wide, but it's still, the affordability issue is about the numbers and the finances.
Where did 25 million come from?
That was from Ed's number, that the because the feds, pumped the interest rate up, 1.5. It increased.
I think due to the current economics, I think the original cost of the public safety facility, when it was proposed to be a joint facility, was 39 million, not including land acquisition of about 6 to 7 million. Because of the increase in interest rates, because of the increase in building costs, due to supply and demand, that 39 million went up to 78 million, and did not include some of the issues that have been raised from the school department in terms of relocation costs and things of that nature. So that joint facility put the total cost above $80 million, which is, which...
Realistically, I think we're looking at 100 million.
That's just, when you look at the debt and interest cost over the term of the borrowing, it would be approaching $150 million.
I think we need to hold a bake sale.
Those are big numbers. The state of Alaska only cost like $8 million. So, 150 years ago. So the scale of going from $8 million for the state of Alaska to, $100 million for one building, like we're living in a crazy vortex, and nobody wants to discuss it. I don't understand why, but these are our numbers. We created them. These are our accounting habits. All we got to do is write down different numbers. You get different results. It's not that complicated.
So I could only imagine what the cost would be to build a new Auburn High School if we were to build it today. 20 years ago, we paid $45 million. I would venture to say, you look at the cost of construction, certainly, you see what they're building in the city of Worcester. Doherty is approaching $300 million. South High was $250 million. Certainly, our schools are not that big, but I would venture to say that if we were to replace the building down on Auburn Street today, that $45 million would probably be approaching $150 million.
Keep building these complexes, we're gonna need a new one.
So that's the struggles we're facing, certainly. I don't see our voters supporting an $80 million joint public safety facility. That's something we'd have to take to the voters. It was decided not to bring that forward, just by the magnitude of the cost. Our taxpayers cannot absorb that type of burden in these economic times, so. But anyway, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
If I might just add, I definitely said that I was in favor of a large scale in a place like the mall and the old Sears building. When I think large scale, I think in regards to volume and space, I'd still like to see serious limits put on the height and the numbers, and even combine it with mixed use. Just to clarify my input.
Do we want to hear from the second group? Sure. All right, come on up. Or do it from there.
You're not going to like me, but that's okay. Just to put that out there. Actually, this young woman over here was in my group, and we did think that there would be some opportunity for large scale and mixed use, both where the Auburn Mall is and over where the Shaw's and the Bed and Bath and Beyond. Part of what I envision when I think of something like that, and when you can do mixed use large scale, is I don't envision in the next 8 years that all of this is just going to go up and we're going to add, like my question was, the 355. I envision that the commercial portion of it, which would all go on the first level, and reuse, such as the Auburn Mall, would offer an opportunity for the individual home or people that are going to buy these units to move in over a period of time. And so it wouldn't just abruptly change our demographics so that we'd have to build a new school immediately or add on. But to go further, so we did see adaptive reuse and large scale in those two areas. In 1 and 2 and 5 and 6, we actually felt that the use of cottages and townhouses and the smaller, really accessible single-dwelling family units would be really quaint back there. Why would that appeal to me? Because we've already heard that people here want to stay in Auburn, and they're really fond of it. But if you have a 2,000 or 2,500 or a 3,000 square foot home, and your children come off and, go off to college and then don't come home, or you lose a spouse or something like that, it would be great to have a neighborhood over where 5 and 6 are, or certain areas where you could then relinquish your home, have an opportunity to stay in town, and move to a smaller, quieter section. So we saw sections 1 and 2 and 5 and 6 as more cottage home community, and maybe for some people living in a single home, if they even have the slightest ADA requirement or issue with their health, if there were to be assorted townhouses or split duplexes, that would be great, because it can afford people that are moving on their own the opportunity to have someone close by in case of an emergency. So I think it's going to happen, maybe not completely in our lifetime, but Auburn is always going to be here, and Auburn is going to need to stay resilient with the times. So what I will say is I think the plan, which started 5 years ago and continues, is not only very much needed, but the fact that we can take the time and invest in it the way we are, talk about it, and get all this feedback out is a privilege, because some communities aren't that organized. Some communities are sort of pressed to, the circumstance, and things are going up around them. But for Auburn, I know people take the time to step into town meeting and to meetings like this and voice our concerns. So the concerns from Group 2 are just what I think, not only what this young woman said about height restrictions and so forth. I would caution the town on moving too quickly. I think it's great to have a plan, get the plan out there, and start to move. But on even some of the adaptive reuse of the large scale, it might be prudent to work with the contractors so that the commercial can get addressed, and then the community above it can fill in, so that we're not ending up with 200 units now at the Auburn Mall with 400 kids that need to go to school because we just rushed a bunch of families into them. Because not only is the fire and police going to have to adapt to all of this change, but so is the rest of the community. And the other reason why we picked the Auburn Mall, and we also picked Yankee Drummer as a mixed use or a large scale, is because when you're in those two sections of town, it affords you the opportunity to get right onto 290. It gets you into the main strip of 2012, and it puts you in a position where you're very quickly able to maneuver through Auburn or out of Auburn without disrupting a lot of the other areas in town, which are somewhat very more residential and quiet. So that's our feedback, and we're sticking to it.
I think that's great, and I agree with you, okay? But the way I'm looking at a lot of things is we have so many vacant, we can't get businesses in because the younger generation just wants to pick up their thing and go, oh, Amazon, I can have that shipped here by tomorrow morning. They don't want to get out of their car and go to the mall or go to the store. You got my neighbor. Hello? Dunkin' Donuts? I need.
Yeah.
And I see Dunkin' Donuts going to their house every single morning.
That'll change.
Because they don't want to get out of their car and go.
No, but what,
But shops in the town of Auburn are becoming few and far between.
no, but what would be really important as part of this plan with mixed use, and it would be something that I'll defend on this point, many, many, many Papagenos in the nation have closed, many of them in Massachusetts. Auburn's has not even been touched. It's one of their best. Verizon on the corner across from the fire station, really accessible. I go by there, I always see people in there. So the goal is to offer some kind of streaming services or things that are going to make the community congregate and make those viable, so that we draw other people into the community. I don't know if you have a census on how many people, we know how many people live in Auburn. Do we know how many people work and commute and actually participate in Auburn on an annual basis? because I got to think that some of the people that have to come to work and come and teach, they need to go to lunch, they need to go to Dunkin' Donuts. You're right that we use our phones, but you know what? We were the generation of developing computers and subscription services, but the intent of that was so that people would have to make choices, and we know now that all of those streaming services aren't going to survive one by one. But I think that at some point there's going to be something viable between brick and mortar and the internet, and it's not all going to be the internet, because we're social beings. I'm not going to be here when that decision gets made.
The last I heard, the town triples during the day.
Does it triple just about during the day?
I think daytime, I think population of Auburn is 16.8. The daytime population is double that.
Double that, sure. But my point is the eye doctor on the corner across from Millbury Credit Union itself, there are some really viable commercial places here, and we can have more. The trick is to understand the community and the services we can provide. And I don't know if everybody's ever done a really good study on that. But, you know, restaurants, if you don't even have to go to college. Restaurants, for every 2 that open, 1 never makes it. For every 2 that open, 1 never makes it, if not both. So we don't want to flood the town with restaurants. There's a lot of other things that we don't want to do. But there are other communities out there. We can't follow suit, to your point. You know, we can't just open up a strip mall, because part of our conversation this evening is possibly to have to replace some of these strip malls with either adaptive reuse or large scale. But some of those shops are important, and it's part of the job of this. I think, even though we're talking about residential and families, I think we'd be prudent enough to think, what are some of the demands that are going to be, you know, they're going to demand as new tenants that maybe may help us fill the commercial part. Just a thought.
Hey, when are you retiring? I thought you replaced me. Patrick Jones?
Patrick Jones, precinct 2.
I just want to, I want to add just, I just don't want to see the businesses forgotten about. I still want to see like storefronts available for barber shops, public parking areas. Like Auburn has always been a town of transportation and, Auburn's a, yeah, I guess so. Hello? Testing? Auburn has always been a town of transportation and commerce. You know, it's gonna be, you start taking something like the Auburn Mall and, you know, make it, you know, private gated, all condos, you know, you lose a little bit of, you know, public convenience and public safety at the same time. You know, none of us like to see people texting, you know, going through traffic, seeing people text on a phone. You know, these places are like a place that we can get off the road, regroup, get a bite to eat, you know, grab a coffee, write an email. I'd say we just got to be really careful, you know, making everything private housing. That fixes one problem, but it takes away from what Auburn, the root of what Auburn is. And yeah. Yeah, it's, I'm sure there's more I could add to it, but.
So, like I had told my group, when I grew up, and I've been in town 55 years, when I grew up, I used to ride my horse to the Auburn Mall, tie it up at the dumpster behind Friendly's, do my shopping, and then ride my horse home. I wouldn't even attempt to ride my horse in these streets today because nobody's paying attention. It's a raceway. Everybody's in a rush. It's like, it's crazy. And I wouldn't even know how to change that.
you're never taking it away. You know, someone's living there, that's their, you know, that's it. That's game over. So, like, the businesses and the public parking areas have to be planned in ahead of time, because there's no going back the other way. You know, you're not going to go bang on somebody's door and say, we're going to blow out these 10 apartments to put in barbershops 10 years later. It's not going to happen.
We have a single tax rate here in Auburn, don't we?
No.
Split. It is split.
Split tax rate.
Split. Okay, that answers my question. So, you know, if anything, you know, adding to the commercial and having a split rate will help and offset, you know, citizens, you know, depending on, you know, there's always been this general sense that commercial.
If you get it evening, you're gonna get more businesses in.
True, but at the same time, residents are here to pay taxes off their income. Businesses are generating income. So they're in a much better position to pay a little bit more if it allows the person who's still the resident to continue to live here. You don't want it to be even, but you don't want a large disparity either. Correct. Sure.
That's dangerous.
Well, thank you. We value your input, and certainly your comments were well received, and we'll take that into consideration as we move along. I thought tonight went very well. Emily, thank you for your presentation, and thank you, everyone, for coming out and participate.
Just Worcester.
We have a number of meetings to schedule before we call for a vote, and this gets submitted to the state. What's the timeline? We're looking at a late fall, early?
So next steps are to continue to develop the goals, which will take a few meetings from us, and then develop the plan. So probably early winter, I would say. But again, please leave your email up here if you signed in, and then when the draft is prepared, I'll email that out to everyone who submitted their email, and then we'll be looking for feedback from the public to, you know, make sure that we captured everything. And this is something that reflects, you know, your needs and your vision for the future of the town. So just stay tuned for that. Again, our meetings are open to the public. They're on Zoom, and they're posted officially. Yeah, so again, thank you. This was a great crowd that turned out tonight. I appreciate all of your input, and we're not done.
I would love to see some town residents on the board. We have how many members are on this board?
What do you see here?
Residents. 4? There's only 4 members? I'd love to see 4 residents from the town of Auburn on this board as well. All of you just work in this town. When your work day is done, you go back to your own towns. I would like to see some input from town residents on the board.
So the composition of the committee is already set. That's something we could take a look at. Certainly, if there is room for growth, we will consider that. This is why we take it to the public forum, so we can get your feedback and get your ideas, and help us formulate a plan that addresses the concerns that you raised, so.
But at the end of the day, it's the board who makes the decision. Correct?
This plan ultimately gets submitted to various boards and committees for approval, so there is a process for that.
This is a committee that's been formed just to update this plan. If the town wants to move forward with establishing like a more permanent committee to work on implementing the goals that come out of this plan, that's also something that we could include as part of the recommendations and encourage town residents to be on that. At the end of the day, I mean, you see, we only got, 7 or 8 people to show up here. It's really hard to get engagement at the public level. So we can talk more about, kind of maybe opening up a spot for town resident.
And then also, if you didn't sign in tonight, we'd love to have you sign in, but we also, if you have your email and you want to put your email. Emily is trying to send out, anybody that wants to stay connected with it, she's collecting that. So I don't actually have anybody's email on here, so if you want to share your email, we would love to have it.
What is the consequence of the plan when it's done? Because I just read the one from 2017, which I guess is the one we're updating. So you say you submit that to the state,
Yeah, and then it's valid for 5 years. Yep.
but what is the consequence? Like they get that, and then what happens?
In other words, who uses it
How does it get used?
for
Yes.
what? Does anyone use it for anything?
Well, ideally, there would be some kind of implementation committee. I mean, you were saying you're on the housing trust, correct? Housing board. Okay, so this could be a guiding document to help, like, that board, move forward and kind of have a document that gives you clear goals and objectives to move forward on. Yeah.
State hasn't built my public housing. One of the few things I've learned, like for decades, I don't know if that's actually true, but it doesn't sound like we're building any public housing.
Yeah, the state's shifted away from that.
One of my questions when I joined with them was, why wasn't Mary D. and Bancroft taking this public housing? That, before I got there, and, there are opportunities that get missed, right? And I think that's the bigger problem, in people's private lives, in public life. You've got enough fires to put out without sort of figuring out how to think outside the box sometimes. This is a huge problem. I think housing is the tail that wags the dog. And until we fix housing, we cannot fix anything. So the fact that nobody can afford housing, or a large number of people, generically, and we were talking about this at the table, I don't think there's a housing shortage. People can't afford the housing. So you have to figure out a solution to make housing affordable, which is different than building. This idea that somehow if you increase the supply, the price is gonna be low, supply and demand has never been true.
People can't
People
afford the
believe
house.
it, but it's not true.
There's a house on my street that they're renting for $2,800 a month.
Yeah,
That's almost 3 times my mortgage.
yeah.
So people can't afford it. It's whether they choose to have.
Well, some people can afford it. Money trickles up, so people at the bottom cannot afford housing, which is, if you've ever played Monopoly, you all start off even, at the end of the game, one guy has all the money, everybody else went broke. So if we're gonna have a system in place, it should be for the losers of Monopoly, not the winner. The winner can buy whatever they want. They don't have to worry about tax cuts for the rich. They already have all the money. The problem is the people that don't have the money, they can never be able to keep pace with inflation. In this, I don't really believe there's a housing issue, because look at all the Airbnbs. There's plenty of housing, nobody can afford it. And I think we need to build a community, we need to create some sort of financial instrument to get pricing down. And regulate pricing, whether it's directly or indirectly, so that people aren't renting houses for $2,800. How is that legal?
What, say this again?
There's too many cars out on the street, now that there's been an accident,
Well, there's been numerous accidents.
right, is that Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah, Southbridge Street.
I
Oh, yeah.
was going there, I was up the street in there, and I'm like, I never seen a car hit anybody's bumper, somebody bumper. Then, I had heard that they were, doing the drive-through this winter, over whatever, but I haven't heard nothing else about that.
Just like everybody else does. Order on your phone and deliver.
Oh, I don't see that. Too social, I mean, go. I can't.
I make my coffee at home.
Well, that's good,
I know, I'm Combies.
one of these days, I will.
I can't afford those.
I can for now.
Well, once again, thank you all for coming, and we appreciate your participation for this housing production plan, so stay tuned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. I have my business card up here if anyone wants to grab it and follow up with anything.
Emily.
Thank you, Emily.